In this video, we're talking about pets in bankruptcy. So stay tuned, bankruptcy bailout buddies. Welcome, debtors, to Bankruptcy Bailout, because debt ruins lives, not bankruptcy. So what we say here is the government's not going to bail you out, the banks aren't going to bail you out, but bankruptcy has always been here waiting for you to pull the cord on that parachute and get you out of your financial problems. My name is Matt Burkus, Colorado bankruptcy and debt relief attorney. Please consider subscribing to our channel so this content can be more widely distributed. Consider it as a way of paying it forward. Because I get it. You don't want people to know that you're looking at this sort of information because we want our financial lives to be private, and I certainly understand that. But if you found this content helpful, someone else will also, and in order for them to find it, we need likes and subscriptions. So thank you. Today's topic is pets in bankruptcy. And now this might seem pretty simple, but it can get rather, and I think needlessly complex. So let's get into it. There's really three issues that come up in dealing with pets in bankruptcy. The first is your pet is technically an asset. So we'll talk about pets as assets in bankruptcy, then pets as an expense, as a monthly expense in bankruptcy in the context of qualifying for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and then the treatment of the pet expense in Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So the first issue is pets as an asset. So let me put your mind at rest. The bankruptcy trustee, the bankruptcy is not going to take Cuddles the cat or Fido your dog. Okay, you're not going to lose your pet. Most pets are going to have, well, all pets have zero value in bankruptcy. So on the bankruptcy schedule, Schedule B, there is actually a line item for non-farm animals, and that's pets. And so you basically list what you have, one domestic short-haired cat, one mixed breed dog, or whatever it is you have, and then just list them as zero value. And no one's really going to question that. The only time when pets get into trouble with asset issues, it's not when they're really pets, it's when the person has a business associated with their animals. So this would be something more along the lines of a breeder is the most common one, or you have something of particularly unique value. But again, most pets, even if it's a purebred or anything like that, that's really not going to have value. But if we start going up the hierarchy of animals, so we're getting above dogs and cats into like things like horses and ostriches or whatever, and into livestock, that's a different issue. But for your typical household pets, no one cares. And I've even had a trustee tell me and announce that the continuing legal education is like, look, they're not going to take anything that needs to be fed. All right, so most trustees are not going to take a pet to try to sell it because they have to feed the darn thing during this time. Okay, so don't worry about pets and asset, and I always list pets as zero value in the bankruptcy. Now, the next issue, the pet as an expense, can be more problematic and more complex. So the first issue is qualifying for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So the quick rundown on this is that, as you might know if you're watching this video, is you have to make under a certain threshold of income in order to qualify for bankruptcy. Now, if you're over that income threshold, you can still qualify if you have more expenses than income, and it's in allowed categories, right? So if you have child support, the high mortgage, those kind of things, you can generally get past the means test. What's not going to get you past the means test is a high pet expense. So if you have something like 5 dogs and you're spending $300 a month, or if you have a horse and you're spending $500 to $800 a month on boarding, and feed, and that expense is really the only thing that kicks you out of Chapter 7, you're most likely to get an objection, and they're going to want to put you into Chapter 13 because their argument's going to be is say, look, your creditors can't take a hit because you're spending $500 a month on your dogs or on your horse, right? So there is this issue with qualifying for Chapter 7 bankruptcy if the only reason you're going to qualify is based on a high pet care and veterinary expense. And so this leads us into the final category, which is pet expense in Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So Chapter 13 is your monthly payment plan where you pay back a portion of what you owe. So the issue there is coming up with how much you can pay, and the pet expense obviously impacts that because it reduces your disposable income to pay into the Chapter 13 plan. So here, again, the trustees are going to scrutinize the pet expense. Now, again, if you just have Cuddles the cat, Fido the dog, your typical household pets, and you're spending, $50 a month amortized out to account for food and annual vet expenses and your typical medications or whatever it is, they're not going to question that, right? But if you have a lot of animals and the pet's expense is pretty high, that's going to be an issue. And the hardest one, and the one I've had to go toe to toe with the trustee on a couple times, if you have an animal that has health issues. I had a client who was spending upwards of $700-800 a month on her dog because the dog needed all kinds of medication and frequent veterinary visits. And we went round and round with the trustee on that one on getting that expense allowed. The only way we were able to do it is the animal was an emotional support animal. So the debtor was able to get a doctor's letter saying, yes, this is an emotional support animal for this person, but the trustee had us put in what I call the morbid clause or the death clause in the Chapter 13. They said they wanted a provision in the Chapter 13 plan, I'm not kidding you, that said, if the dog dies, the debtor needs to report it to us within 30 days, and then we need to evaluate the Chapter 13 plan at that point. All right? So there are ways to negotiate around these issues and come up with creative solutions to deal with a high pet expense in bankruptcy. But in general, most pets are not going to cause an issue in bankruptcy. It's just if your situation is unique, either you have a high pet expense or you have a really valuable animal, then that's going to take some care and consideration in how to deal with that in bankruptcy. But you're not going to lose the pet in bankruptcy. So keep your mind at ease on that one. And then the issue just becomes how much are you spending on your pets in the given month and whether that's reasonable or not. So that's how pets are dealt with in bankruptcy. My name is Matt Burkus, Colorado Bankruptcy and Debt Relief Attorney. I hope you found this video useful. I represent individuals in Colorado and offer free phone consultations to residents of Colorado for the purposes of bankruptcy. Good luck.